Now that we're talking about parenting, oh my gosh, I had no idea how hard.
Were there any sort of Chinese sayings or traditions that people were like, you know, the locals were like, you have to do or you need to follow because you've just given birth?
Well,
So good, because right now I'm joined by one of my besties here in Beijing, Miss Alison Watts. And we've known each other since like 3 years?
I was just trying to figure out, I think 4.
4 years.
It's almost 4.
4 years. I arrived 2 weeks before she arrived in Beijing. My old workplace, her workplace now, but it's so good because we've kept in touch and remained friends since then.
We've gone through a lot together.
For a lot. Let's see how much we can share.
Okay.
But it's so good because when I first wanted to start this project, I initially went to her and was like, what do you think of this? And she was so supportive. She's like, you've got to do it. So here we are.
Here we are.
One of my first interviewees. She has no choice. So okay, Alison, I know a lot about you, but I want my viewers to know, like, how did you end up in China? First of all, where are you from, actually?
I was born in Minnesota. Went to university in Boston, lived in New York for a while, and it's really funny. So this was like around, I guess I moved to Shanghai in 2010.
Yeah.
Well, I know I moved to Shanghai in 2010. But leading up to that, there was a lot of talk about China at that time, right? The Olympics had just happened in 2008.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lot of opportunities and excitement. I had several friends who had come to live in China. I was like, wow, I should just quit my job and move to China.
And at this point, you were in New York.
I was in New York, yes, working in publishing. And then around the same time, I had a really good friend who quit her job and moved to China, basically. And she met a French guy while hiking at Tiger Leaping Gorge, and they fell in love. And she called me and she said, hey, I know you've been joking about quitting your job and moving to China, but maybe now you should actually do it, right? Because I'm going to move here. And I was like, I didn't know. I don't say that. But I've never been to China. I don't speak any Chinese. And like, my life is here, but let me think about it. And the next day, maybe 2 days, but really soon after that phone call, I lost my job. And I was like, oh, well, okay, let me call her back and, be like, yeah, maybe that sounds like a good opportunity because there's the recession, right? And everyone was losing their jobs. Yeah, all kinds of industries.
That must have been tough, actually.
I mean, it was and it wasn't. I was in my early 20s, so like it wasn't exactly what I expected, and I think it never feels good to be let go, but everyone was so nice and supportive, and in the end I remember the publisher coming over and she's like, don't worry, this will be the best thing that ever happened to you. And of course at the time you're not sure, but then looking back, it was.
And it's actually interesting because that was during a recession, but we're kind of going through that similar situation now because of COVID and the pandemic.
Lots of uncertainty.
A lot of uncertainty, a lot of people are losing their jobs, and people have to quit their jobs, so everybody's kind of in this uncertain period. So for those that are probably going through something similar, what would you say? What kind of advice would you give?
Gosh, I feel as if I've kind of weathered the storm twice, maybe 3 times in China, right? Like the recession, I'm going to say Trump, escaping kind of that era in the US, and now the COVID times, because of course things aren't perfect here, but our lives are, I feel safe here, and we're pretty much protected from that fear of catching the virus, at least for now. So I know it's not for everyone, but of course for me it was being open to moving to China. That's not for everyone, and of course I wouldn't recommend that to everyone.
People want to know what it's like to be an expat, especially in China.
In retrospect, everything looks wonderful, but those first months in China were really hard and cold, and I didn't know what to eat, and I couldn't talk to anyone, and it was really hard.
Yeah.
But then
You're
of course,
sick as well. I'm sure.
not even. I mean, yes, of course. But I think it's just the day-to-day figuring things out, the internet, your phone, you know, all these things. But then, you know, kind of taking that deep breath and knowing that this is natural and things are going to be easier. So it's really funny now, even, you know, Jude's preschool, you look at the kids and you're like, I don't know who goes with whom. You know, who's mom, who's the dad, all these different languages. It's really awesome. So that's something I really like about Beijing. But of course, I think there's this question of when you're raising kids, you know, like, are you going to do the TCK thing where they're just going to be a global citizen? Or are you going to give them a real rooted sense of community where, you know, they know they're, let's say, American and Minnesotan and there's nothing in the way to that sort of identity? Or are we just living in a world where it's not so simple like that anymore?
So you gave birth the first time and now soon second time here in China.
Yes.
What was that like? Tell us a little bit about that experience. And actually your parents were around for that. Did your mom say like if your experience was any different to hers?
I don't think she remembered. I asked her a lot and she's like, I really just don't remember. It was so long ago. Of course, it was completely different from her experience, I'm sure. Yeah. And I don't really have much to compare my experience to, right? I've only given birth here. But I think for us, we paid for a package deal, right? So we don't have insurance to cover childbirth, so which we knew and we planned ahead for. So I think it's really interesting again because coming from the US, I'm like, it's a good deal. But of course, talking to friends from the UK or Europe, they're like, oh my God, we can't believe we have to pay anything here. And some people, their companies pay for it, right? It's included, and some have to pay out of pocket. So yeah, the finances are all very interesting. And then you get the deal, and you have like a prenatal deal where you have a certain amount of ultrasounds and checkups and tests and things, and then you pay for a birthing deal, and then you can pay for a C-section deal. But anyway, so it's expensive, I guess, compared to some systems, but I think you get really nice care. And we went to an international hospital, so the nurses and some of the doctors spoke English. And I mean, my first experience wasn't great because I was induced, so it was in labor, contractions, epidural, and then in the end it didn't work, so we did the C-section in the end. Anyway, but yeah, my family was there. My sister came from the US, and the nurses were extremely helpful. So it was like 5 nights in the hospital and then home. And so this time will be different because, of course, we have a toddler already, and no parents, and no sister.
I don't know how she does everything.
Yeah, but I mean, people go through much harder, right? Taking a break. But the good thing is now, of course, we have our IE, so she can help.
Be a big help.
But extremely helpful, yes. I mean, now she's technically on holiday, so we're doing everything by ourselves, and we're also on holiday, so we have the time. But I'm like, wow, she does so much in terms of preparing food and playing with Jude, and yeah. But yeah, she said she can make herself available. So yeah, so it's, I don't know. I again don't have much to compare it to, but I think it's been very nice.
Were there any sort of Chinese sayings or traditions that people were like, the locals were like, you have to do or you need to follow because you've just given birth?
Well, so I think at this hospital they're very sensitive about that. I remember even like a very small detail, we're like, when should we clip the baby's nails? And they said, well, in China we usually don't do it for a month. But you should do whatever you want to do, like whatever you think is right, because we don't want to, tell you what to do. So that's kind of like one example where it's like, well, we don't recommend it, but do as you wish. But I think one of the important things to note about, like with Chinese women, they usually do the yuezi. I'm going to say that wrong, but it's the month after birth, where basically you don't shower and you have some special soups, and the idea is to kind of let your body recover after a very stressful experience and let your organs kind of go back into place. And now I think there's this whole industry, right, of like very expensive, luxurious places where you can do that, and basically a spa for new moms. And yeah, I remember thinking that's so funny, right? Because and even our doctor at the time, she's like, man, these German moms come in and they're like out the next day, you know, they give birth and they're going home, whereas certain other cultures are like, nah, I need my time. But then after I gave birth, I was like, oh, that sounds great. I get it now. I get it now. Please sign me up. So yeah, I think there are a lot of. Another little thing is, he was born in May, for example. So he was a baby during the hottest months of summer. But then, a lot of Chinese ladies be like, you gotta put socks on him. Where are his socks? And I was like, what makes you think he needs socks? You know, it's so hot. So like, of course he does. But even with RIE, like she has her ways of doing things, but she's again very sensitive. She's like, maybe I would do it this way, but you know, you guys do it that way. Just in terms of medicines, right? When you give a child medicine, when you don't.
And is it true that was Rafa in the C-section room?
Oh, that's a good question.
Usually the partners aren't allowed in the room.
It's a really good question. So I think it depends on the hospital.
Okay.
I think with the local Chinese hospitals, the husbands or fathers are not allowed into the operating room.
Right.
And then COVID happened, and I think they were not really allowed in operating rooms at all.
Yeah.
And now I think like there are certain hospitals that allow the dads in there and some that do not. Okay. So last I heard in our situation, Rafa can be in the operating room with me. I think last time he didn't want to go and they made him go. He was like, no, it's too scary. But in the end, of course, it was very nice to have him in the room. Because it's just really stressful.
Stressful.
I was going to say stressful, but also joyous. Yes.
And this time around, he's also going to be. Do you have to tell them in advance, right?
Yes. And now we have to do COVID tests, right? Just had our first COVID test last week in case I went into labor early, so we'd be prepared. And they do it at the hospital too, but we paid a little bit less. I'm doing it outside our house. But so I think he'll be in the operating room. I think we'll do a C-section again, and then at some point we'll bring Jude to, visit and meet his little brother.
I'll be there.
And camera right now.
Anything you wish you knew before that you now know about giving birth?
China? Yes.
One or two things.
I mean, every child's different, but for me, I haven't slept well in 2.5 years. So some kids sleep a lot better, and everyone said that to me. Just enjoy the sleep while you can. I was like, yeah, but they were right. That's been a huge challenge.
I think that's because of China, just generally.
That's and every kid is different. I think some are really good sleepers, but of course for me, I didn't know how hard that would be.
I mean, in terms of, I'm just thinking of people potentially looking to move abroad, or are abroad and are about to give birth for the first time in a different country. What would your advice be from your experience anyway?
I'm sure every place is different, but there are...
But in China, for example?
In China, gosh, I don't know.
Just be ready.
Be flexible, be patient with yourself, be patient with others. I think there's so many cultural differences, but we can't let those upset us, just to kind of embrace the positive in any place you are.
And I guess maybe if, for example, you don't speak the language in the country you're in, definitely bring somebody who'll be in a call with somebody.
As long as they're like a medical translator, I think.
That's it. Medical translator.
I've had some situations. Again, everyone's different, but I'm really glad that we're paying for a place where they speak English and. I think if you have someone translating but they're not a doctor, then that can also just be worse in some ways. So I don't know. I think you just have to know your situation.
Rafa is Syrian, you're American, and you're planning to move the US at some point in the very near future.
Yes. So I think again we have very nice lives here. There are a lot of things we like about living in Beijing, but it's not really a sustainable place for us for several reasons. One is just, we want to be closer to my family at least. Syria is not as stable as the US, obviously. And we want our kids to have a sense of home and family and community. And I think just speaking of education, it's so expensive to send your kids to school here, but also maybe just an education system that we're more familiar with.
Just from your experience, just a rough number, how much it is to put a child to school here?
Well,
international school, right?
I know preschool, right?
Preschool, yeah.
So preschool, I think it can range between 90,000 to 250,000 RMB.
In dollars, do you know?
In dollars, it's got to be 15 to 30,000, right?
For 1 year.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the math.
Yeah.
But it's very expensive, and you do have more local options, but they're also not affordable, I would say. And then you have the IE culture too, of course. You have an IE usually, and it kind of adds up once you start having children. And then once you get to real school, I think the fees go up a lot. So we knew that going to the US was part of our plan.
Who has impacted you, inspired you, or influenced you in any way? It could be small way or big way that you want to shout out to.
My parents, I guess. Like, now that we're talking about parenting, oh my gosh, I had no idea how hard parenting is. Carly and Alan, and throw my sister in there too.
Yes.
I mean, in a different way. But yeah, I mean, and they had it so much harder than us, right? Like, we have smartphones, we have the internet, we have a million group chats, we can ask questions. I just remember my mom saying, like, because she was a school teacher and she'd have to be in class by like 7 a.m. but get me and my sister to preschool in the middle of Minnesota winter. And I was like, oh, how did you do that? No, so yes, thank you.
That's lovely. Shout out to mom and dad in Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Oh, and sister.
And sister, yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much.
Thank you. So fun for to experience the being interviewed by Jenny.
Yes, and more. We'll definitely do more with Alison in the future with
the family,
kids.
maybe.
Yes,
be a little more boisterous.
Yeah, and actually where we are right now is a special place for us because we used to do our Chinese lessons here with the late, beautiful, wonderful Lily. So sadly she's not here with us, but I thought let's just do it here, a place where we can remember her.
Yes, that's a really good idea.
But next time you'll see more of Beijing, hopefully, with Alison and Jude and baby number 2.
谢谢。
Oh, thank you.
I love you.
And then short turn round.